Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the Grounded Reason podcast. Today, we're talking about the Internet of Things. Now, there's been a lot of hype out there for, the past 5 years on the Internet of Things and what it's going to do to revolutionize our world. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, then you really need to listen to this podcast because it's going to kind of get into, something in technology that's going to affect everybody's life. And I know there's people out there that are saying it's all hype and, it hasn't really delivered. But all things like this, when it comes to, big shifts in technology work this way. You have a big breakthrough. Everyone gets excited about it. You hear a lot of media coverage on it and then it goes away. And then, 4 to 5 years later, it hits and it's everywhere. And I mean, the same thing that's happening with virtual reality right now. Back in the 90s, virtual reality, very exciting, and then all of a sudden it became a big joke, because it wasn't really delivering, and now it's back, and it's evolved into different things like augmented reality, like the huge successes of Pokemon Go. Well, I think Internet of Things is going to be hitting that sweet spot very, very soon, to where it is going to be going everywhere, and it's going to change the way we act and use technology. So. Really excited for this one. Joel and I have been talking about doing this one for a while, so sit back and enjoy.
We just came down here, and my kids, which are both pretty little, both under 6, were chasing us down into my sad little basement. So
this is right now. Joel is completely ruining the mythos of the Grounded Reason podcast.
Oh yeah. This is high-end studio.
We just actually were demoted because if we talked about this on the first episode, I think we were in the dining room.
Yeah,
because Joel's wife was out of town.
Yeah, well,
right?
She was out, and so we had the run of the place.
Right. So now we're demoted.
Now we're down in the basement.
We're in the basement,
on folding tables and right next to all the baby equipment. And but my kids were running down here to see what we were doing because Dennis is coming over with all the recording equipment.
Right
as I'm putting them to bed, and they thought it was fascinating. Mm-hmm. That is probably the most interesting that Daddy's ever been.
Yeah, we've had 3 kid visits. His daughter, who's snuck down here. She's like a ninja. She was super quiet. I looked over and saw, and she was just there.
There is nothing like a 4-year-old to freak you out in the middle of the night when you're just walking. You got to go pee, and they're just up and staring from the side of the room while you're getting ready to walk down the hall.
All the time. Penny. Actually, Penny's a loud one. Georgie's she'll sidle up on you and kind of get you.
Yeah.
But when she was down here, when she snuck down, she was so quiet that after you gave her a hug and asked her to go back to bed, I thought she was going to throw a smoke bomb and just be gone, ninja vanish, boom, out. So,
so we're supposed to today talk about. I think we're going to do some work around or discuss Internet of Things and...
Right. Well, we were going to kind of go into... let me start with when I started the blog, I honestly had no idea what I was going to write about. I just wanted to write to get better for writing's sake. I at work, I realized that my writing could improve. So I figured, hey, I start a blog. And it's bound to happen if I'm shelling out an article a week or 2 a week or whatever.
Sure, makes sense.
So I started writing, and I think I did an article on comparing the accident rate of cars to the accident rate of roller coasters to prove that roller coasters are safer than the thing you rode to get to the amusement park. And then I wrote an article on basically internet access around the world and how much people in the U.S. pay versus people over in, say, South Korea, which we pay a lot more for less bandwidth. But and then I wrote an article about Internet of Things, and I wrote an article about cord cutting because we were cord cutters. I was really at the time throwing darts, trying to just get a sense of what I was going to write about. But I realized, spoiler alert, cord cutting won out because that tended to get that got the most interest. But what I realized about the things I was writing about, it was about technology's disruption and how technology affects us and changes, the human condition and how humans interact. So in that vein, I kind of want it today to maybe go in a different direction with the podcast for, at least this episode and maybe a couple more down the road where we're going to talk about, technology in a general sense and how it changes things. And today we're going to talk about Internet of Things. So.
Yeah, and I think the Internet of Things is going to be one of those technology sets or changes, however you want to describe it, that's going to be particularly impactful because you're talking about effectively having all of the materials we have in the world turned into a sensor,
right?
More or less.
Yeah, and it's called Internet of Things because literally everything gets an IP address.
Yeah, I mean anything that's been anything that has been produced into a final good,
right?
It ends up with an IP address. So your refrigerator, coffee maker,
right,
etc.
And to give you an idea, there are companies right now because sensors have gotten so inexpensive.
Yeah,
that there are companies that have put sensors for quality control.
Sure.
This is a hypothetical. I'm sure it probably exists somewhere. Say you're a chair manufacturer and you make office chairs. You can put a sensor in your chair for quality to know, hey, this model of our chair gets sat in, 10% less than this model, or they shift their weight, ever so often. We need to fix
determine stress ratios, etc.
Right. I went to a Gartner conference, and this was actually went to beta in wide release, and I think in Brazil. But Huggies, I think it's either Huggies or Pampers, one of the two, put sensors in diapers, and
let's see why not. Right?
The diaper would literally tweet the parent when the diaper got wet or so, and
wet or warm,
right? Depending on probably.
I have a baby. Right. So it's wet or warm.
Or warm, right? But it would, and the name, I'm not kidding, you can Google it, Tweet P.
Sure. Why not? Why not?
It didn't hold, but when I heard that, okay.
It didn't hold water? Is that where you were going?
I didn't want to bust out the dad pun.
Wow. So. That is, even inferring that was
be
bad.
Here all week, try the veal.
Yeah.
So
tip your waiter.
Right. So, but, when I heard this, my immediate reaction was, man, that really says something about the laziness and parenting.
It really does.
But, there are applications for that.
In principle, it's amazing.
It is. And think of maybe a convalescent home or something like that. Nurses would be able to service more efficiently because they would know where to go, and
you switch
your loved one wouldn't be sitting there
you switch that idea to depends, and all of a sudden people find it a lot less objectionable.
Exactly, and that's the kind of thing that while these are just two examples, of ways the Internet of Things can work. There's also some very, very impactful things that are going on right now. Using the Internet of Things.
Well, before we get into those, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you'll know the background on this. But to set up for the Internet of Things, I believe IP address format had to be changed.
Yeah, they did. They had to go from is kind of in the nerd weeds, but IPv4 version 4 to version 6, which allows for hexadecimal.
Right,
characters through it. It's a longer string.
So effectively,
nerd.
Well, but what it effectively means is instead of allowing for a very large number of IP addresses. It's now an astronomically large number of IP addresses.
Yeah, we were probably, they said we would never run out the first time.
And then we did.
So, but it's a...
it's a pretty darn big number.
It's pretty huge.
So that's kind of the groundwork that needed to be laid, and that was done, I want to say in 2011 they rewrote it.
They did, yes.
But someone, I'm sure, is losing their mind listening to this saying it's 2010 or whatever.
But, right. And I'm sure we'll hear about it.
Right.
And another thing is a couple things had to happen. The first was the IP address issue. Second was sensor technology had to get like dirt cheap, and it is now
remarkably cheap. Yeah.
And the third thing was that we needed some type of communication spectrum, and we had 4G came out.
Yep.
The 3G network's still there, but it's still being used. 5G's on the way. Once that happens, they can probably take that 3G spectrum, and I think, I'm pretty sure they're already repurposing it. You know, in some aspects, I hear AT&T allowed like their 3G network to be used by a couple of Internet of Things chip types. So,
well, the nice thing about that is you're really not, in general, you're not talking about moving a lot of data.
Not at all. No.
And it's a very uniform type of data. It's really a very zero. God, they're all 0 and 1, but they're.
It's a small payload.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So with all that, that really lays the groundwork for everything to basically have an IP address and then communicate via the internet. Now that opens up tons of stuff, like you could do. Remote appliances, like whether that, remote turnoff on your appliances. You left the house. Did I leave the iron on? You look on your phone. No, it's good. My wife asks me all that question without fail. Like every time we go out, did I leave it on? I have to check now.
Well, and actually, like one of the big things with that. So that's a fairly practical example, but that's more of a like home convenience, but just from a straight energy efficient
smart home
perspective, you get to smart home where all of a sudden now you can start having heat and cooling regulated at non-peak times, right? Because you have more efficient sensors all throughout.
They're actually with I know Nest does this. Everyone needs a smoke detector. It's the law.
Sure.
They're actually repurposing those as sensors, so you don't need to install a sensor. You can just put the smoke detectors where they're supposed to go, and they'll, not only will they, figure out how the house should be climate controlled based on who's in the room, because that's what it'll do. It'll know, this time of day, it'll start to learn your patterns, and based on, you wake up at this time, we need the room to be this temperature. No one's home at these times, so it doesn't need to be, the heater cooling doesn't need to be on. It'll really learn how you behave and adjust to, you.
Well, so it's from a micro perspective, it's remarkably efficient and hits us all where it should, right in the pocketbook, right? But from a macro perspective, all of a sudden, there are studies about how dramatic the energy savings could be societally for, particularly the United States, but all countries that would use these technologies. So it's really amazing stuff.
Yeah, and like intrusion detection is a huge one too, because you can put a sensor in every window and door in your house, and it would let you know when on your smartphone, like when one of those are breached. Smart locks. What's
the one right now that is the you can put it right on your front door, and it's effectively just an app on your phone that tells you, it runs a camera and shows you who's ringing the doorbell or
it's really cool. What it is, how you can respond, like if you're on an intercom system.
Sure,
it actually behaves that way. I think.
Yeah.
Where
it's like when I used to live in an apartment, someone would buzz
to
get in,
except it's on your phone, so you could be
wherever
in the world, and then someone rings your doorbell and you can answer it.
Yeah, or they fiddle with your doorknob even. And
right, because that's what people will do. Burglars will, to see if someone's home, they'll knock.
Right.
Or ring the doorbell. If you answer, they'll, make up some story and leave. But it's really just a test to see if anyone's home.
And I could be in Bangladesh and, my home's, in Baltimore, and I could answer it and say, yeah, please go away.
Yeah. I mean, and these are all practical uses. And speaking of practical uses, my wife, we had a fan in our dining room that she didn't like, and we were going to remove it. So I pull it down, and she bought a pendant lamp. So I started installing the pendant lamp, pulled it down. I get halfway through installing the pendant lamp, and I'm like, "Hey, sweetie, there's no switch on this lamp."
Oh, yeah, you were telling me about this.
And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "What's a pendant lamp? It just kind of, it's supposed to be on a wall switch." And this fan had a pull cord, so
there's no wall switch.
What are we going to do? And for some reason, I forgot that we were living in 2016, and I got really upset that I went, because when I take down a fan, I take down a fan. We're not repurposing this thing.
Right.
It's done. So I'm like, oh, and I didn't really want to install the pendant lamp that day, so I really was not in for it. And then this just added on to my internal fury. Which manifests with my wife as, yes, dear.
Right.
So I'm stewing, and then I'm like, wait a minute. And I go to Home Depot, and I buy a Bluetooth light bulb, which basically works from your phone. And so I install the pendant lamp, put the Bluetooth light bulb in, and now I just turn the lamp on with my phone.
And I just want to point out, for the record, that, 60 years ago, you would have been burned as a witch for that type of thing.
Oh, I love doing that. Like my daughter had her friend over, and I, embarrass her by pretending that I have magic powers.
Sure. Well, because what else would you do?
Dulcie, watch this. Because they were talking about Harry Potter. And I was like,
Georgie was telling me that.
Luminoso off. And
she was so mad.
I got the word wrong.
She got the Harry Potter
it's
verbiage wrong.
It's luminoso, blah, blah. It's leviosa, or like whatever.
She was so mad.
She was very angry.
Great.
But yeah, I mean, and that's just like, that's at Home Depot. All this stuff with I got the Bluetooth when, this was a while ago. I got the Bluetooth when I want to get the networked one and actually run it on a hub, and it'll do things like, if you want to set an alarm in the morning, your lights will just all go on for you if you want it at 6 a.m. or whenever.
And these again are all practical examples of how this will affect us in our day-to-day lives at home, and this is in its infancy.
Yeah,
we're not even getting into manufacturing and like maintenance and operations of things like railroads and roads and major sewage systems.
Well, it's
and
safety.
Things like that they're talking about.
Yeah, and like smart cities. Imagine if you had, if you build a bridge and you put sensors on the bridge, like there was, the Delaware Bridge had an issue.
Yeah.
Actually, a citizen noticed it and pointed it out, and, Engineer Corps came and took a look. And they were right. They had to shut down the Delaware Bridge for a long time to get it fixed. But if we had, these sensor chips on bridges, it would alert people when there's an issue. Same with buildings. If they're swaying too much or there's an issue, all those safety concerns where, we don't really know. I mean, reports are released all the time saying that 10% of the bridges in the country are unsafe. Well, this gives us a way to know immediately when something starts to become kind of, a tenuous
and there
situation.
is going to be a little bit of back and forth, like another one that I've heard about.
No pun intended with the bridge.
Yeah, right, sorry, with the sway thing. But there is going to be a little bit of back and forth between things like drone capabilities, not to stray too far off topic.
Right.
But this is actually, right now, there are people thinking about and looking at drone technology for monitoring like inspections of railroads, and they're commonly used now in farming. Like I don't know how he'd be related to me, but he's part of my family in some extended way, is a farmer, and he uses drones to monitor his farm. So there is going to be a dividing line between those technology sets, but they're all similar in the sense.
Similar, but I actually think IoT will probably lap drone because
I think it will.
Drone technology.
In most instances.
Well, yeah, you're not going to be able to deliver like payloads of missiles from a sensor chip.
But the other is I think you won't see it as prevalent in things like agriculture, with the exception of sprinkler systems.
Well, there's that. I mean, you could do. I'm sure there's probably a way to do like pest detection. Well, I mean,
Sure.
Environment detection.
But again, these things are not meant to be competitors. They're
they're not.
complementary.
Yeah, they definitely are. But another thing, getting back to smart cities, is well, I know Baltimore has like the waste management. You mentioned waste management earlier. Baltimore has the trash cans down there. They go off when they get a certain certain amount of volume in them,
yeah.
And the city comes and takes them away. It's an efficient way to manage
It makes
trash.
a lot of sense if you think about it. I mean, just if you knew, right? I mean, this is a waste man. I mean, this is a terrible statement, but this is a waste management person's dream, that you know exactly which trash can is full at what moment,
Right.
Rather than having to go check them all periodically.
Yes.
So now we can do that.
And the city stays cleaner because they're actually getting to them before they overflow.
Well, and they don't need to hire, 1,000 other people. Now, so that being said, tons and tons of benefits from these technologies. But the double-edged sword with this technology is that a lot of the things that we used to have to do through raw brute force, where we would hire tons and tons of people to, let's say, check the trash cans every day, right? We don't need as many people because now we can just empty the ones that are full.
Right.
Because the sensor tells us which ones are full.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always work to be done, and I think we need to change our viewpoint from technology is competing with people as more, I guess, human-centered design, where technology is being used to augment people.
Well, fundamentally, right? Like I can drive a nail with, my hand if I hit it enough times. It just makes my hand pretty ugly.
Yes.
Right? So hammer's a far better way of doing it, right? So all technology is really just tools, right? Mm-hmm. And so fundamentally, again, all we're really talking about is like it is a constant like push and pull of, us humans, we have to deal with the pros and cons of any technology set that comes out. I think one you wanted to talk about was automated cars.
Because Google autonomous or self-driving car, I think it won mid-2000s, won that DARPA challenge.
Yep.
And then I think it was actually, they started using it on roads in around 2011, 2012.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
But it is, completely driverless car. There's not even a steering wheel in the thing.
Well, that's actually a big debate that's going on right now.
Right.
Let's
get some, before we get into that, why don't you, I think, because you know a lot about, this. For the layman, you know a lot about the Google car. So 2012 is when they started, and they've been, do you know roughly how many millions of miles have been?
I think it's like 1.4 million miles. It's about like 6 or 8 months ago they had driven and gotten into 14 accidents, I think it was, at the time.
Oh, wow. Well, let me pull it up.
I don't know what it's done as of late.
Well, I know. Okay, cool. Google does monthly reports. And in July, 1.84 million. Okay. As of July 31st. So,
I wasn't too far off. I mean,
that's
like I
pretty good.
said, 6 months ago.
Right? Yeah, you're probably
too bad.
spot on. I just fact checked Joel, and Joel was pretty right.
Yeah,
So.
which I'm as surprised as the rest of you.
So, yeah. And you said, so it's 14 then. Now, I know they actually had, this year, they had a bit of press because they did have a bit of string of accidents.
They did. They had a hard time. I believe it was with things that were like pure white. So like a white panel van is kind of confusing for the sensors, which seems like a really big deal. But I got to tell you, I cannot wait. And I can't say this strong enough.
Me neither.
For the driverless car, because I know I am a terrible driver, and I love my fellow human beings, but I know they are sleepy and annoyed and distracted way too often for me to trust them as much as a machine.
Okay. And now a recent report, and I've seen different numbers because, like, depending on how good the reporter is, but you said this was 6 months ago, and you said, but there's been 18. Only one was the fault of the Google car out of those 18.
Yeah, most of them were rear-ended, if I remember correctly.
And it was minor damage in the one that it was at fault.
Right.
Now, the funny thing that gets called out is because it's actually the accident rate is slightly higher than normal driving, but it's rarely ever the Google car's fault. What tends to happen, the reason why the accident rate is a little higher is because the Google car actually obeys all of the traffic laws.
Right, like, so it will come to a full and complete stop.
Right.
There's no California, stop signs, when it comes to the Google car.
Yeah,
it comes to it, and it stops.
Now, I know if I'm driving, and I'm in, if it's Sunday, and no one's on the road, and you come to a 4-way stop, and we all do this.
I'm going through it.
We roll.
Yeah.
You slow down.
Slow down a lot.
A whole lot. You never really come to, like, if you're in physics class, there's no stopping.
There's no, it's not a real stop.
No, there's constant velocity there.
No.
It's very, very small. So, and you think about this, when you come up behind somebody, you almost kind of expect them, if you're seeing what they're seeing and there's no one at this 4-way stop, you're expecting a bit of a roll through.
Yeah.
So you're adjusting for that. Well, if you're behind a Google car, you're going to be hitting your brakes and coming to a complete stop. Not everyone realizes that.
A very common accident that's similar to that is if you're like the second or third car back and you're at a stop light and it turns green and the car waits for, because it's programmed in to wait for a couple seconds to make sure no one's running the light. Right?
Because that's what we should do.
Because that's what you should do. That's what your parents told you to do when you learn to drive. Right? But nobody does that. So it waits for a couple seconds, and it inevitably gets rear-ended by the person behind them who wants to get to Starbucks.
Right. And so it's not really fair to the Google car to say that it's in more accidents, because it's in more accidents because it follows the rules.
Well, and it's the nature of so where I was going earlier with the whole big debate that's going on, and it's between the Google team, from what I understand, and the regulators.
Right.
Is this idea of, should the automated car, whether it's made by Google or whoever, right, be a elevator or should it be an airplane? And what they mean by that debate is that the elevator used to be operated by human beings, but, like anything operated by human beings, there were pretty fair number of mistakes.
Right.
When people would lose limbs or, God knows what, right?
Yep. Oh, you're not in, right, close the door.
Guy's angry at his girlfriend, who's he's operating the machine, so he slams it down and it cuts a dude's arm off on the way out.
Not
or
good.
Whatever horrible thing, right? So eventually what they did, and it took, actually, if you look it up, the history of it is they had to do a significant campaign to convince people to get on automated elevators without a human being actually operating it. And now...
Because it's a demon.
Well, yeah.
There's a demon in the elevator.
It's clearly witchcraft.
Right. There's not a person moving it around.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
got to be a demon with wings.
Absolutely.
Grabbing it with its talons and flying us up to the 14th floor.
What else could it be? Right? So it took a lot of work for people to convince, other people to get in these devices.
I find it hysterical because the same debate with the car.
It
was the same
identical.
exact debate they had when the elevator became magic.
It's nearly identical. And so they did all ad campaigns and so on. And eventually they won out. And one of the secrets to how they won out is they put the little red button, the emergency stop button.
That's my kid's favorite button.
I swear to God, I am almost 40 years old, and to this day, I know I've never pushed that button. I've never been in an elevator where anyone's ever pushed that button. I'm not convinced those buttons actually do anything.
I haven't heard of anyone, I don't know of anyone that's actually pushed the button and wait to see what happens. Now, Penny, my younger one, has pushed it on 3 occasions, and I've picked her up and run so fast out of the elevator because
who knows?
Right, I don't know.
Right, and guaranteed, what would happen if you pushed those buttons and someone's going to write in and say, "I'm the guy who designs those buttons. They do something very." But
I would
forget that.
I would venture to guess that if you push that button, there would be a bunch of people scrambling.
Yeah, because nobody would know what the procedure would be. But anyway, so that is the elevator model. And that is what Google would prefer. That is why Dennis referred to earlier, their design has no steering wheel, right? That is their actual design.
Yes.
The the airplane model is you have an autopilot that does the vast majority of the flying, but a human can override the autopilot at any time.
Right.
And unfortunately, quite a few, and I won't get into because I haven't looked it up, so I don't want to say.
And a lot of those, I don't want to.
A lot of those are human error when there's a tragic accident.
Right, and I don't want to call out any specific incident because, of course, those
are all up for debate. And
they're all up for debate. But, I mean, generally, it's not the autopilot that's in command of the plane when it goes down.
Well, and the other thing that is, again, it is tragic by its nature, but the nice thing about programmable rules is that once an error occurs, it can be corrected, and then from that point on, that error does not occur.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually went to a conference recently where they discussed a bit about some of the issues with the airplane model because what it does is pilots, they know how to fly planes. They've been through all these flight hours and training. But if they're in a plane and they become reliant on the autopilot, when they really do need to take over, it's usually going to be in a panicked state.
Sure.
Because you're switching their behavior from I'm monitoring to I'm flying the plane.
Right.
And
that's a big shift.
Huge shift. And so what they're talking about doing now is and I'm getting back, it's more user-centered design where you either go all auto with it or you put a pilot in there that's flying the plane, but it's really the technology is adjusting and assisting auto-correcting the pilot.
Which I have a feeling that's where we're going to go with commercial driving for most everything. And now the one area where effectively you can see this with backing up sensors, right? Where you'll start to back up in newer models of cars and they'll start beeping at you or even pump the brakes if you get too close to something.
Yeah.
So I think that will be very common. Where I think you might see full-on automation is heavy trucking. Heavy trucking, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, this is pure speculation, obviously, But I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't get dedicated lanes and you just ended up with full automation with just a human being in there to assist with the offloading and onloading of merchandise and signing for things and etc.
Well, I mean, truck driver is consistently up there when it comes to one of the most dangerous jobs.
If it's not top 10, it's top 15 typically.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at, taxi drivers and chauffeurs is 10. So I know, truck drivers is usually...
I have a couple relatives that are truck drivers that is a hard, miserable job.
Yeah, it's like 8th. I mean, according to 2014 stats I'm getting here all the time, it's, fatal injuries per 100,000 is 24.7.
And the other thing that's crazy about heavy trucking is that just by volume, right, there's going to be less heavy trucks than there are cars. So there's fewer accidents caused by heavy trucking. But, proportionally, the fatalities tend to be higher just because of the mass, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Gigantic vehicles.
Drivers, I think it is out of the top 20, because they're just doing it, they're ranked top 20 by injuries per 100,000. But if you look at the toll from each job in 2014, truck driver was the most dangerous, 880 people.
All right.
So that's a lot. I mean, for, a job that we all see happen every day.
Yep. Seen all the time on 95.
And it kind of gets back to, like, with Internet of Things, if every car was on a sensor, and you would have, a lane that they could all get in, they could all speak to one another, they would know where each other are.
Oh, yeah, this is a huge deal.
So while, if you take the human factor and the auto driving car together on the same road, yes, you're probably going to have some, mix-ups. If you automated the whole fleet, I bet you it would be such a rare thing that, it really would.
The crazy thing, because I did some of this back in school, like statistics on how long it takes to turn over the entire fleet of, like, the United States, because I forget what it is, but it's something like we have 240 million automobiles in the United States or something like that. It might be more now, because I'm old, and it was a while back when I did it. But it takes about 20 to 25 years to turn over the entire fleet. So it would have to be a significant, probably government-sponsored initiative to turn over the fleet faster than that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you would, in all likelihood, get, or at least everyone who's thinking about this topic is forecasting, is you would get a significant drop in traffic from, much like you were saying, just all of the vehicles being able to talk to each other. You can ride them closer.
Right. You could be a train. You could really...
Effectively, it's a train that just disconnects whenever you get close to your destination.
Right. Because I talk to people, and I would generally... it's getting better. More people are kind of on board with this thing. But the people who are against it are very against it because... And
I get it, right? Like it is again, I have my things where I'm like, no, that is legitimately witchcraft, right?
And it's kind of what you get.
It's a vitriolic reaction.
Right.
We're emotional creatures, so I get it. But
I definitely get it. And especially in America where the car is kind of
it's very close to our identity.
Yeah, it's like the cowboy in the car and apple pie. Or maybe the cowboy driving a car eating an apple pie. I think that's
together.
A very American.
I, for some reason, have a picture of Sam Elliott in my mind. I think it's actually his birthday today.
Oh, is it? Happy birthday, Sam.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, it's one of those things where, and again, this gets back to
today. When
we're recording.
Right,
sorry.
So.
But
happy belated birthday, Sam.
There you go. But it gets back to that, like, smart city concept you were talking about. Like, all of these things, again, when you end up with, the quote-unquote Internet of Things, all of these sensors interact in ways that are almost unforeseeable right now. Right? Like, it's way too complicated to really forecast other than, wow, that's going to be a big deal.
It's going to be huge, and it's probably going to be, one of the most, disruptive technologies. One of, not the
certainly of the next couple decades.
It's going to be, I think, internet big at some point.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, like there's the big dogs like fire, right?
Yeah.
The wheel, right? Like and you're not going to disrupt it, but because everything builds on everything. But the Internet of Things is going to be big.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's about time that we kind of start wrapping this one up. And our wives were just making fun of us because we can't really close one of these out.
Yeah, so we're not good at the sign off. So anyone who's out there listening, which I hope there's a couple of you, if you've got suggestions for sign offs, I would love to hear.
We need a contest because originally, I think we should just do, the movie quote idea.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. What was the one you were thinking about?
That'll do, pig. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe. It would really, really help our ratings out there and get the show out there to many more people. And also, tell your friends, let people know. If you're enjoying it, let them know, give them a listen. We want to try to get the word out there about the show. I really do appreciate all the listeners. And we would love it if you guys want to submit some movie quotes to end our show. You can just do it. You can tweet at Grounded Reason, hashtag movie quote, or you can go to the Grounded Reason Facebook page, which obviously enough, if you just search Grounded Reason on Facebook, you'll find it. But I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Or you can come to the website, groundedreason.com/podcast. Look up this episode and go ahead and submit some comments. We love listener feedback. It tells us how to improve the show, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what you don't like about us, what you love about us, hate us, get off the air, please. Anything. And really, just go ahead on in there and go ahead and leave your comments. Oh, and one last thing, I do want to remind you, if you do subscribe, then you do get newsfeed updates. Basically, if news happens out there that's pertinent to topics that we discuss in the Grounded Reason podcast, like for cord cutting, for instance, somebody releases a new service, new channels, I'll hop on the mic and do a same-day audio record and just post it out there so you can kind of get like a news feed on what's going on in the world of cord cutting, now Internet of Things, and other tech topics that we discuss in the future. Again, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next Monday.